Okay, welcome to the Crypto Uni. Court is back in session, and today we will be overseeing the case of Coffeezilla on Joe Rogan. Haven't actually pre-watched this one yet, so we're just going to do it in real time, and I'll get my reaction as we go.
Right now it's just this kind of wild, wild west of you're just having to trust these shady offshore entities that they're telling the truth. Binance says they're fine. They show proof of reserves, but what are their liabilities? It's hard to know.
Absolutely true here. So the fact that there's a bunch of shady offshore exchanges who aren't bound by your nation states, in this case the United States, laws of regulation and governments means that they can do a bunch of shady things on top of the fact that they're using crypto, which kind of enables them to obfuscate certain things by hiding them in wallets if they desire.
So people really just take you at face value, and they have to trust that, like, oh, other people are invested, so I guess I'll jump in too.
And that's why the celebrities are important. And that's why
Huge part of
the
it.
connection to BlackRock is important.
Huge part. Yes, because they're the legitimacy that says, hey, I too am safe because Tom Brady's got his money there. So I can put my money
So is
there.
the lure
So I just on this point again, we're not going to fix this problem. This isn't a crypto problem, by the way. Um, Advertisers use celebrities for the reason that people are not able to critically think or don't want to critically think and are more likely to be partial to things that are recommended to them by celebrities. So again, I don't know how to take this, but it's probably something we shouldn't do collectively, but people are going to do, and they're going to keep doing that.
is like how Bitcoin used to be worth very little, and then one time it was with the high of Bitcoin, it was like 70,000 or something like that.
60 plus, yeah.
So that's the lure. The lure is you buy in for pennies, and one day you're insanely rich. I'm sure you know about that one guy who lost a hard drive and who's paying people to go through a landfill
Yeah.
to try to find his hard drive because there's billions of dollars
Great
worth of
story.
Bitcoin on that hard drive.
Yeah, people lose their crypto keys all the time. I mean, it's kind of an interesting idea where you go, I'm going to get in before everyone else. But a lot of people found out about crypto the same time the mainstream media, everyone else did. So by the time they're actually investing,
It's too late.
it's too late.
Let's just be clear. This is again. I don't know how many times we're going to go over this. This is recency bias. So this was done last year. So let's say at the beginning of last year. So right at the very bottom of the bear market. So this narrative that hey everyone got in 2021 and it was too late is absolutely bullshit because we've seen prior bull runs, and in fact I've been a part of both the 2018 as well 2017 as well as the 2021 bull run. So this is like people just look at the last runway, the last, 1 year of a performance of even a company, let's say. They wouldn't, that's not the full story of the company's history and that stock's history. Anyways, I don't know why they keep doing this with Bitcoin, but it's like we all have goldfish memories. The past doesn't exist and we don't contextualize anything. It's just, oh, there was a major crash or 80% down. We haven't seen that before, and this means that crypto is dead and it's a scam. I don't understand the reasoning here.
I think the most fair case you could make about crypto is
Mhm.
sometimes national currencies aren't a great idea and you want an alternative.
This is an amazing point, and it's something that I keep harping on about. So let's let him run, let's let him cook. But a great point. So love this one.
So look at the Turkish lira, right?
Amazing.
The inflation rate, I think, is like 75%,
Yep.
or something like that. It's an unimaginable, it's just out of control inflation. And if you hold on to your Turkish lira, you're in for a bad time.
And I think he's talking about year over year inflation. I don't think it's month. I think it's year over year inflation. So over the past year, prices have almost doubled essentially for a lot of people. That's what they're feeling. It's fucking insane because of course, your wage, your income is not doubling, but the cost of vegetables, the supermarket meats is all doubling.
Because every day it's getting less valuable. So the question is, what do you do if you're in that country making money? If you want to store your money somewhere else, how do you store it? So there's these idea of these alternative currencies that are kind of interesting.
And I like that Joe Rogan also went, I'm not sure, because I do watch the JRE, and it just seems like Joe Rogan overall is pretty much against cryptocurrencies, which is, to be expected. It's fine. He hasn't really had anyone in who's too pro crypto, as far as I understand. He's probably had one or two people who are excited about it, but No one who's really been able to explain it like a Michael Saylor or like a Raoul Paul. But again, this point, it's not only. I think I just want to make sure that Coffeezilla is not just saying this and only this. Not only is it the case that your regional currency might actually be losing value, it might be losing value relative to gold, it might be losing value relative to the U.S. dollar. So you can put it into Bitcoin, but you don't have to. You can also use the stablecoin networks. Now, whether or not Tether is going to be around in the next 10 years, and maybe it's going to have a famous implosion, I'm not sure, an infamous implosion, we'll see. But the fact that you can now, without any requirements, without asking or begging with anyone, without being associated with the United States, you can start tracking the United States dollar. It means that if your currency is going down quicker than the US dollar is relative to all of their assets relative to gold, you might as well at least put it in USD. Why the hell would I put it in my local currency? Now, I'm in Canadian here. We reached a new Bitcoin all-time high before America did. Why? Almost every currency around the world popped and reached a new all-time high before America's did. Why? Because they're all bleeding against American dollar. Canadian dollar is worth less than what it was against the American dollar in the previous bull run in 2021. So because it's worth less, we actually got to a higher point. We actually set an all-time high while America was still under its all-time high.
And then there's some arguments that like, hey, if you're someone like me, I have 2 employees and both of them are overseas. Like one of them's in London, one of them's in Ukraine. And so for me, I have to pay them and, I have to do this wire transfer and it's kind of expensive to do these, like you pay all these fees for wire transfers.
Yep.
So the idea is like, okay, well, if you have crypto, those wire fees can go down. And instead of taking, maybe a day or something, it'll take like 5 minutes.
So overall, again, he's made 2 amazing points, which is you're trying to hedge against the devaluation of your own currency. That's the first point he made. And the second point he's making is, let me just expand this. Incumbent global financial infrastructure is very conservative and hasn't innovated, and all big spaces don't tend to not innovate when they don't have to. And because of that, something like a wire transfer, depending on what bank you're trying to go to, might have to pass through intermediary banks and might take days to clear. And it is not quicker simply because there's been no motivation to actually enable a better system than the Swift system. If you're doing remittance, maybe you don't want to pay a remittance company $50 a go to send it from America to the Philippines, right, to help your family out. Maybe you want to be able to freely do that. You want to be able to do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you don't want to have your niece open up a bank account. You can just send her the money directly via, let's say, USD on a Solana network. So amazing use cases for Bitcoin that he's pointing out, and you really tell that he does understand crypto.
For 3 minutes. So I don't want to give off the idea that like there's nothing here, but the problem is that with the lack of regulation and the ability to send peer to peer, which means like you and I can just send money to each other directly, no middleman. There's also a really huge opportunity for fraud, scams, and basically like, shell games where you're hiding the money.
Yeah.
You're saying, oh, invest in this. This is going to become valuable later, but you actually own a bunch of that token. Then you sell it off and then the price plummets. So you thought.
Yes, and what he's pointing to again, amazing. Yes, so crypto overall, because there's no middleman, it means that you're removing the layer that the government has the most effect on right now, especially because they haven't tried to regulate crypto or introduce a stable platform. And I will talk about this at some point in relation to as an analogy between record studios in the 60s and 70s making hand over fist, making money all over the place, not being able to adapt and not wanting to adapt to the digital age. People then being able in the late 90s, early 2000s, everyone has broadband. We all have internet now. We all have cable internet. We all have hard drives that can now store a shit ton of these media like movies and music, but we don't have any streaming services. Apple wants to charge you, like $1 a song or whatever, and the CD company, they still want to be releasing CDs, the record studios, and they want you to, for 3 songs you want to listen to, you got to buy a $20 album or whatever. So it was untenable, and they didn't make a solution, and pirating became popular because of that. And then once pirating had its own problems, just like crypto has right now, once they actually start creating a streaming service, like they upgrade the initial offering with guardrails, with a good service at a reasonable price point that doesn't, screw people over. In this case, with fiat currency, you're not getting screwed over by holding it as asset prices go up. If we can negotiate that as a communal body, as a body politics, as civilians, then we have the option to actually get better services, actually have a fighting chance in the financial gladiatorial realm, so to speak. So yeah, he's perfectly right now. I think this is, I don't want to say conspiratorially it was done on purpose, but the fact is that without the regulation and without taking this technology seriously, you're enabling people. You're basically asking people to be pirates and to go online. You're not actually watching it the way that you should be, and monstrosities are happening. And then you're able to point to it as the incumbents in the space and say, "Hey, look at all this disaster. Look at your grandmothers are getting scammed all over the place. These scammers are preferring to use Bitcoin, and terrorist money is flowing through it. This is horrible, right? We should just shut the whole thing down." It is. I mean, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy there, but it is very beneficial to the incumbents to actually not have any regulation, actually not have any movement, just let the whole space fester. But his
You had a
points are
bunch of money, but
correct.
actually it's worth nothing. Like there's all these new scams that have emerged as a
Yeah.
result of people getting interested in this idea of an alternative money system. I mean, yeah, especially in our modern age. I mean, it seems like you can understand where they're coming from. The average person, they're like, "Look, I've been screwed by the banks.
Yep.
Every time the government's printing a bunch of money.
This is very good. Yep.
Where do I
Very
go?"
good. He
Right? You
knows.
can understand the appeal, but it's just like you went from the arms of one huckster to another. Like it's just like
Amazing.
it's
So he has a very deep understanding of what's going on, because that's the game that we're playing here, right? It is between being screwed over by your nation state and the global financial system, which is not set up for the average middle class person. Wages have stagnated in purchasing power since about the 70s in developed countries, more or less. The system is not set up for you to succeed. People are feeling that right now. They don't know why. They don't know what's really going on. They feel like their government's failing them somehow. They don't really understand the story of overprinting, of national sovereign debt. They don't understand how interest rates really work, other than that it affects them. So they don't understand why their assets are going up, and they don't understand how very rich people are mostly not paid with annual salaries, which get taxed extremely high. They keep it in assets that can be exposed to the asset fluctuation of the prices as they get boosted by economic easing, essentially quantitative easing. So yeah, I think he's perfectly captured exactly my thoughts on this, and I would just ask Coffeezilla. I mean, I know he's very critical of the scams in the space, but it sounds like he also has really good knowledge. I would love to know from him if he thinks in a hypothetical, if governments took it seriously and started regulating and said, these coins, these networks, these alternative value storage and alternative value processing and movement settlement layer networks, we're going to start being much more involved in these, and we can help guide you all. I think my view on it is kind of like the abstinence thing for sex. It's kind of like, I don't think we're going to get people to stop having sex here. So we should probably educate them on how it's safe to do. We should give them, hand out condoms. We should embrace the fact that sexuality is happening. It's actually a good thing that people are sexual. Like, there's not something to shame them about, and we're not going to get them to stop. But we have issues. We have issues with sexuality. There's unwanted pregnancies. There's certain diseases. Like, so the only thing we can do, because we can't actually stop it. Abstinence is not going to work. So the real thing is to embrace it and to help regulate it and help guide people. And the governments aren't doing that right now, right? And it's letting it fester.
Almost to something worse. There are reasons that our banks have a bunch of anti-money laundering laws. There's a reason that they have all sorts of finance laws. It's not for their safety.
Again, amazing. I just want to I just laugh because it's like, yes, what he's saying is correct, but didn't stop the 2007 2008 financial meltdown, which we're still living as a consequence of. So yes, there's regulation, but if the politicians go in there and remove Dodd-Frank, and in the American context, if they start ripping out, as Trump's presidency did, from what I understand, it doesn't matter. Like, there's regulation, but then there's not regulation, and the people who write the rules are also cooking the books. I mean, again, it's better regulation than nothing. That's what I'm saying. I would hope government would step in on crypto, be much more proactive, and help the space grow as opposed to shunting off to the side and letting it fester. But I mean, I just want to be realistic as well. Cutting off corruption is like cutting off the head of a hydra. It's whack-a-mole. I think he understands this, and I think he would agree with me.
It's for your safety. I mean, it's like they need to, fight. Like, one of the best ways to fight crime is at their wallets. Like, take away their banking. And crypto has just really revitalized that because
I think I think this is a sensitive topic for the crypto anarchists, and I think this gets to kind of like freedom of speech and people being pro-Nazi and people being able to say atrocious things. It's like I haven't thought about this enough yet, but I know that there's a correlation basically between what he's saying here, where it's like we should give the government the keys to the vault where they are able to turn off people's monetary taps. They should be able to go in and turn them off. And then there's always a worry of overreach there. And the same thing happens when it comes to kind of freedom of speech and social media. It's kind of like if we let these entities be able to turn off the taps, it's all good. They're going to stop a lot of bad actors, but every once in a while, and maybe it becomes a slippery slope. I'm not partial to slippery slope arguments overall, but we could see it as this way. It starts getting a little bit more misused. It starts skewing the culture. And there's people who control these things. I mean, the real problem is there's power structures in place, whether it's democratic, it's a Democratic or Republican parties, it's political parties, it's corporations. They have a vested interest, whether it's to the party itself, to their stakeholders, to enriching themselves, whatever it is, and that's called corruption. Basically, essentially, you're corrupting the organization. Yeah, and as a result, they don't end up using the tools correctly, and they end up abusing them. And so it's like I think I'm a pretty big believer in freedom of speech overall, which is it can get quite disgusting as well. And I would say this of banking, there's potentially an argument to be made about like freedom of banking, essentially, where we don't want to, we actually don't want to craft that tool for the government to be used too widely and become political. It seems like an apolitical tool, but all of a sudden it doesn't become. I mean, in Canada, the trucker protest was the main one where the federal government used the Emergency Act, which has never been used before by the government, to cut off banking from people who actually didn't, they weren't charged with anything, from what I understand. So this was a big overreach, and the Supreme Court of Canada actually ruled on this, saying as much. Like this was an overreach, and it shouldn't have happened. Just an example.
because now if you're some criminal, laundering money has just never been easier.
Yep.
Instead of taking $100,000 across the border or wire.
Again, and I can't help it. Like this is true, but TD Bank, Toronto Dominion Bank, just got fined. I think it was $1.8 billion. This is after this interview. This was very recently. This was about a week ago. For some of the biggest conspiracy to commit money laundering in America's history, essentially. So, it's like the traditional banking system is there, but it's effective, but it's not. It's effective at catching you, doing transactions you shouldn't be doing, making sure you get taxed. But are we shutting down any of the drug cartels? Have we done it in the past before crypto showed up on the scene? No, it wasn't done. There wasn't the ability or initiative to do it.
Wiring it where it can get held up by a bank.
And I don't want to equivocate. I just want to make sure I'm not equivocating. If we make it even easier for bad actors to be banked and to proliferate drugs in society, of course it's the worst thing. And if crypto is enabling to do that, of course it's a bad thing. I mean, there's no argument.
Now I can just send you $100K. It's going to take me 5 minutes.
Right. So that's why when people like kidnap people's data and things along those lines, they'd like to get paid through crypto.
Ransomware. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good use case.
Because before it was like, okay, you need to use like Western Union or sort of one of these places where you can kind of send money without too much.
But again, I just want to make sure as well, like, is the main issue here is not that the payment rails are working or not, or it's a bit harder or not for the scammers. The main issue is, are we doing our part to educate people and protect them, essentially? Right? And I think when it comes to scamming, which existed way before crypto, probably the thing that's affected scamming more, rather than the advent of crypto and the ability to extract the money in a quicker way, in a quicker arm's length way, was probably affected the whole space more, is that people are slowly becoming more educated. And when the baby boomer generation eventually is done, and we have people who basically have used technology throughout their work life and throughout their adolescence, it's going to be much harder to scam them in those ways. So even though you've got the payment rail there, which is like, once we effectively scam someone, then we can extract the money easier, but you still need to be able to effectively scam them, right? And like this is where I think we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here by saying that the issue is that they can more effectively scam people on the monetary side of things. If we limit them and educate people get better at this. What I'm saying is, Crypto enables this. It's not the cause of it, and the solution is probably not actually getting attacking the rails, because before crypto, scamming was happening all the time, very prolific. It's about making people informed and understanding the risks that are involved in what they're doing.
Scrutiny, but even Western Union has been they've been getting kind of pinched a little bit, like, hey, you guys got to stop allowing all of this. But in crypto, because there's no middleman, because there's no one who controls like Bitcoin, like no one can say like no to a transaction. Now it's like there's nothing to stop you from sending that money, and then you can take that money and you can send it to what's called a mixer, which is this like fancy language for
he knows,
for a way
he understands
to like anonymize your transaction. Like you put $100,000 into this little mixer, and then it sends $100,000 out later, and nobody knows where that money came from.
What is a mixer? How does it work?
It's interesting. So the most famous example is Tornado Cash. They've recently been shut down, but the idea
just the idea of putting your money into Tornado Cash.
Yeah, it's wild.
Is there a better analogy for losing your house?
You know what's funny? Yeah.
You know, I mean, good Lord.
The idea of these mixers was you'd anonymize your transactions. So like, let's say I put like let's say I have Ethereum, one Ether into this mixer, right? This pool of money. A bunch of people are putting one Ethereum into this thing. So all this money's going in, and then you basically wait. And as you're waiting, Ethereum's going out everywhere. A bunch of people are withdrawing, right? Because they're also taking their money out.
Right.
Yeah.
By the time you withdraw, there's nothing tying your Ethereum to your particular address to like this random external address, because you send it to a different one. So before, it's like if I send you $1 and then you send that dollar on, we can easily trace that back to me, right? It's like here. But if I send $1 to you and everyone's sending you $1, and then you're sending $1 to all these other wallets, that it's impossible to know which of those new wallets my dollar's from. It's like it's crazy. It's a crazy idea that these basically nerds in cryptography thought of, which is it's brilliant. I mean, it is brilliant because it is basically it's almost impossible to trace. But ultimately, the outcome of that is like, yeah, I encrypt all your data. Joe, send me. I know you're this successful podcaster. I want you to send me $10 million, or your data's lost forever. And you're like, call the police, and you go, hey, track this guy, and they're like, to what? To a Bitcoin wallet?
And I love that he's giving the technology its due. He's saying in a way there's a brilliance to it, and I agree that there is. It really does sound like Coffeezilla understands where he's going. I think at this juncture, one of the main things to talk about at this point would be pornography. Pornography famously has been the front runner of audiovisual technology over the ages. So essentially, what's happened is pornography is a huge market. It's always trying to front run things. It has very low kind of morals. Like the industry doesn't have scruples about doing various things. So it's in that way, it's very innovative. It's not a conservative industry at all, right? You're putting pictures of people up that are having sex. So in that regard, they're able to, because they're such a dynamic industry, they're able to introduce new technology very, very quickly, and their user base also appreciates that. So VR porn is starting to kind of take off, and people have headsets can watch that. So the end result here, what I'm saying is that it's not surprising sometimes in life that the people who front run technology first and foremost are doing it for unscrupulous reasons. They're doing it for reasons that are not the best. So whether it comes to porn or whether it comes to war would be another one where like huge technological advancements, including the A-bomb, are discovered, are pushed, are found, are created, synthesized during wartime because the pressure is there. So in a way, I'm just saying that technological advancement actually can often be seen as coming directly from a dark place first and foremost, because the actors there don't have the morals and they don't have the kind of conservatism that the regular markets will have. So people in certain sectors will end up using a promising technology first. And from what I can see, this has happened to Bitcoin in spectacular fashion on the front page news for like almost 15 years now, basically. So I'll just make that point as well. It's like is the tech is being used by bad actors primarily at the start at some point. It seems like it's starting to turn around now with the ETFs. We seem to have more legitimacy and people are seeing the good value in it. The good value of it, though, however, has not been realized yet because the main actors in the space, the incumbents, the banks, the sovereign states, are very worried about their loss of power, which again I think most people, including Coffeezilla, could see is a good thing to some degree. So we're trying to weigh the good and the bad of a new technology, and part of the conversation I think that we're missing is that we've new technologies can often front run in a very negative way, but eventually they can come through the other side and become useful, and then they can become bad again. I mean, the internet was a really good example. Like, um, information superhighway, and then in a long enough period of time, actually, it's starting to become a really negative thing where there's a lot of misinformation on it, and it seems like it's not helping our political and social discourse overall, and it's not necessarily helping people become smarter in a way that we hoped it would. So technology can ebb and flow in the way that it's used and how it's perceived, but if it's powerful, if it's promising, I think that we should help push it forward. And I think both the Democrats and the Republicans within the House and within the Senate are both seeing this now. They're seeing that there is actually real potential here, probably spurred on by the ETFs. But anyways, I digress. Coffeezilla is a boss on this topic and definitely knows his shit. So I'm gonna give this a solid. I'm gonna give it a solid A. I think. Let's just go with A. The reason why I'm not doing A plus here is because I feel like I really did want to know more from him in terms of uh, his views about what's good and kind of like the trade off on technology and whether it's worth taking a bet, and kind of like these ideas, just maybe supporting or denying these ideas about autonomy, personal ownership, freedom of your financial future, relative to the nation state and what's going on there, because he seems to be aware of it. So would have loved to hear more from him with that. In any case, I got to get a gavel at some point, but court is adjourned. It's an A for Coffeezilla. Awesome. Good job, man. And love to see it.